Treyev was a third shift engineer on Imperial Refueling Station 19643, also known as Goddess's Farts whenever the officers aren't around, referencing the hydrogen they pull from the gas giant they orbit. If you were in the presence of officers, the station was called Red 1, due to the hue of said gas giant they orbited. Treyev was currently cutting out any goddess listening, because whoever worked this pipeline before her decided to pull out all of the half-length Imperial Standard bolts and replace them with quarter-length Metallia Corp garbage. It was like they wanted the pipes to burst when someone decided to draw fuel faster than they were supposed to. She ran her hand down her face, the glove of her void suit meeting the clear faceplate of her helmet in front of her tusks, and gave a final sigh. Right, well, nothing I can do about it now. This'll take a few hours to fix, and I'm due to get back inside the station in 5 due to regs. This'll be a job for whoever comes next. There was the sound of a sigh over Treyev's open radio, as the woman in the shift after her heard the plan. I swear, you knew this was what happened, and you waited until the last moment to check the pipes, so you could make it my job. Of course not, Treyev replied. Just had to inspect our dish in half first. You know how procedures go, Rivnesh. Through the sound of grumbling, Treyev looked out into the void of space, watching the stars flicker in the sky. Out past the gravity well of the red gas giant, the telltale flash of a civilian phase drive briefly created a new star, heralding a fateful shuttle's arrival. Captain Clayhart-Rochelle knelt in silence in her ship's chapel, a hand-painted fresco of the goddesses and God resting above her before an altar. She knelt silently, thinking, reflecting. Meditation more than prayer, but still an act of respect. There were traditions to uphold. Eyes closed and breathing steady, she could almost feel the crew leaving the ship, packing all their bags, equipment, tools and posters, stripping their rooms and workplaces down to nothing and bringing it down the gangway to a petrol refill station. It would be the last time they stepped foot on this ship. Opinions flickered through her mind, words and phrases and statements and names. It was almost time for her to decide. Captain Clayhart-Rochelle knelt in her ship's chapel and breathed in perfect silence. Milk and Cookie walked down the gangplank of their ship, sea bags over their back. Although, to be honest, it was less of a gangplank and more of a docking umbilical, or the walkways one would see at an airport. While the interior hangars the patrol carrier was currently docked in did have an atmosphere, it was a thin one, and not something you would want to be exposed to for the time it would take to disembark the ship. I still don't get any of this, Milk said, waving her hand at the collective mass of stuff making up what was going on. She was wearing her proper dress blues, brass breastplate and all, and that, combined with the sea bag strap, was definitely going to cause bruises tomorrow. Venture's Fourth looked back, carrying 3 people's worth of mechanical tools along with her clothing, robes and assorted stuff. Mechanical arms were bullshit. What? The whole disembark thing? Yeah, Milk replied. I get it's some ritual. Lord knows our Navy has some weird ones, but I don't get it. Venture 4 pauses for a moment, still walking towards the assembly area, but did pause. Trying to find the right words for this. Humans have a concept of spirit and soul, right? Milk nods. Right, well, at least with the Gears Child, we believe when you do something, when you put your passion into something, your effort, your time, your love, your anything really, you put a bit of your soul into it. It's why we, the Gears Child, pass down cybernetics. Even if they have had every piece replaced, the soul of it and the soul of those who have touched it remain. But what about your soul? Milk asks. Doesn't it get, I don't know, shrunk, since you're putting it in a bunch of stuff? Vengeance 4 shakes her head. Nope, you cannot reduce what is. Capital letter is, by the way. Your soul is a constant in the galaxy, much like the galaxy itself or life. It cannot be lessened, but when you put a bit of yourself into something, it in fact grows. So to create is to become more. Milk made a noise of understanding, looking back to see Cookie deep in thought. The devout Catholic, having listened in and beginning to filter these new beliefs through his own lens to understand them. She then looked back to Venture's Fourth and asked, But why does this all mean we leave the ship, with all our stuff? I can answer that one, Slivers said, sliding along the floor, carrying a significant amount of stuff on saddlebags strapped to her tail. He of slender tail, Slivers to his friends, moved down the landing berth cord, idly listening to the conversation going on ahead of him. Ventures Forth and Iveen were discussing souls, and he realized he had something to input. Well, tradition states that when you're at your post, your entire being is at your post. It was infuriating to speak with this lisp, his tongue and vocal cords creating a long, mocked hissing sound whenever he made the S sound. That includes your soul. Ah, like ghost ships, Cookie said. Smooth voice and rumbling baritone, sending her tail flicking in happiness. Dead men still at their posts, even when the crew has long since died. He of slender tail nodded. Exactly. This is a ritual to escort the souls of the previous crew off the ship. A ship cannot serve two captains, after all. That includes every cruise station. Ivy made an idle noise of understanding as Cookie tilted his head. But if we're getting off and the spirits follow us, what's keeping them from getting back on with us? The group had made their way into the station and were being led into position by NCOs and officers. The interceptor crews, led by Talfin and Semwin from the Academy, formed up by flight and the small bundle was forced to separate. You'll see, he of slender tail called out, heading to his position behind the watch matron. Rochelle got a small ping off to the side of her replacement eye. A piece of shrapnel from a near penetration had damaged the optical nerve, and so she sought to repair the entire eye with cybernetics before it could cause her problems. The benefit now is that she could be alerted to private matters without the crew noticing, and, after typing the display into the crew's records, could look up any crewmate's name on the spot. Captain Rochelle blinked and dismissed the alert. It was time. She started kneeling for a few moments longer, offering up a prayer to whatever deity was listening to protect her crew and ship. Captain Rochelle then stood, gave one final bow towards the altar and fresco, before putting her cover back on and striding swiftly towards the docking umbilical. She had a speech to give. Ryan Brooks, Cookie, Joseph Kennedy stood silently at attention, watching his new captain march onto the platform before the assembled crew like it was a battlefield. She strayed with perfect cadence, every step measured and equal in length and time, her shoulders squared and face completely blank. It was genuinely impressive the amount of self-control she had. He remembered the story she told them, and felt a shiver go down his spine. Captain Rochelle cleared her throat, standing before her assembled crew, as their patrol carrier hung in the dry dock hangar behind her, a massive glass window allowing the masses to view the prow of their proud ship. But there was something off. Where the name of the ship would be proudly displayed, lit up by running lights and royal colours, there was simply a working tarp covering the text from view. Rochelle cleared her throat one more time before beginning to speak. The first thing that hit Cookie was how she was dressed. The crisp blue patrol uniform and brass breastplate shone in the medium light of the station, and rows upon rows of medals and honours decorated the full armour. However, one specific thing drew Cookie's attention. It was a single braided rope hanging from her right shoulder, with two black strands and a single gold strand. This was one of the rarest decorations to have acquired, in a time akin to peace, for it was given out by the hand of the Empress only for personal services rendered. Shamatl, I call you here to see how far your children have wandered, Rochelle spoke, in the clear diction of a preacher, praying to the gods and goddesses of the shill. Seek us out, and may we always use your light to guide us along these voyages between the stars, so far from your heat. It rang like ritual, not quite religion, but something said for tradition. Neosa, look away from us, guide us into madness not, but turn the eyes of our foes from our plans. He was reminded of the first time his carrier crossed the equator, when the captain rolled out the ceremony and paid tribute to Neptune. Hell, we beg that you stand with us as we fight and rage, and Krek, we pray you keep a bed warm for us when we pass. The veterans among the crew called out, but don't set the sheets just yet. Rochelle nodded. Good. Now that is done, I have come to speak. This is a good ship. This is our good ship. The capital letters could be heard in the way the captain spoke. But she is also the previous crew's good ship. A ship cannot serve two crews, two captains, two duties, and so I come to rename this good ship. So when we embark, the souls of those who served are let to rest on eternal shore leave. The hard-eyed woman scanned the crew. "You are all sailors of patrol, and you have served well on your first convoy, your first shakedown. But it is time to let the souls who aided us depart with honor. The IPV, dearer than gold, is retired. Its name struck from the records, and though we share its hull number, we know this ship is ours." Rochelle began to pace. "But what to call this good ship of ours? I could hear words heralding from our history. The great battles above Shul's skies as the true crown traitors were brought to heel. Perhaps the Cambrian resistance of the war cries that shattered the back of a Typhoon-class aerospace Dominion craft." There was a sound of stomps as the Cambrian recruits in the crowd slammed their heels against the floor of Thrice. "But no. I think there is something I must pull from. Rochelle stopped pacing behind the podium, and the window behind her sprouted text and screen. "We have all heard of the Terran First, Tooth and Claw, who ripped an Imperial world from the hands of the Roaches. We have heard their words, and perhaps we have heard some of their histories. I come for words to call from them." Cookie's jaw dropped as a new face appeared on the screen. A human's face. A man's face with a clean, Navy-approved moustache and straight black hair. The picture was black and white, but he recognized that man. "But the histories we have heard of came from their army, their tanks, their air force. No, I draw this quote from a Navy two in our ranks know well." Another picture appeared. A painting of a man with the powdered wig and canted naval hat. Crisp uniform of the Continental Navy standing on the sailing ship. "2 times have I found this quote echoed, and twice it was by sailors who truly understood what it means to be underway." Rochelle spoke, raising her voice and projecting so even without the subtle microphone, the entire crew could hear. "First, from a man who refused reinforcements from an ally for, in his own words..." Rochelle took a breath. Cookie thought his jaw had fallen before, but what came out of his captain's mouth next struck into his core. When Rochelle spoke next, it was in crisp, clean, formal English. For the first time in multiple years, he had heard the language of his home spoken by someone other than himself, or the woman so close he might call her sister. As captions appeared behind his captain, she called out in Cookie's birth tongue. "I wish to have no connection to any ship that does not sail fast, for I intend to go into harm's way." The captain took a breath. He then proceeded to raid the home ports of the greatest navy on his world at that time, harassing them up and down their coasts, sinking enemy ships and capturing their foes when his own vessel was shot out from under him. When asked if he wanted to surrender, all the man replied was, "I have not yet begun to fight." The painting of a man wearing an old naval uniform gained the name Captain John Paul Jones, as Rochelle continued. "I then found the phrase which I am drawn to in a second speech. Echoing the message of the first, this captain crewed a destroyer in the second of 2 great wars the humans have fought. He protected an anti-stealth ship group when he found himself faced by an entire flotilla of the finest his enemy could offer. Destroyers by the dozens, frigates, heavy cruisers, and even battleships were arrayed against him. All he had was a handful of patrol carriers, escort ships, and destroyers at his side. He commanded that his crews move to general quarters and should make ready to engage the majority of the enemy fleet." The gathered crowd of crew began to listen in, excitedly. For though Rochelle barely spoke, when she did, all knew to listen in their gut. "The USS Johnston went down swinging like heroes," Rochelle roared, "against an enemy so fast it could not hope to prevail. It fought like souls damned to the deep, and forced the enemy to turn and run for fear that these ships were merely the harbinger. And so I speak his words. When his destroyer was commissioned, 'This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go into harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off now.'" Underneath the picture of the man in the suit, a name appeared. Commander Ernest Edwin Evans. Rochelle was not done. "And so I have chosen a name for our good ship. A rallying cry and claim to courage. We are a patrol carrier. Small and alone, we guard the convoys that tie our Imperium together from those who would prey upon it. Some may call this a harmless job, an easy one, but we know the truth. Every convoy that we guide is spirited along by the sacrifices of all those who have come before. We go into harm's way, and so that shall be our pledge and call. Reveal the name," Rochelle yelled out, as the paint crews floating around the hull of their patrol carrier threw away the tarp to reveal 3 clean words written in bright spacecraft paint, illuminated by the running lights. IPV, into harm's way. Cookie felt it was the start of something.